Hello everyone, I'm Casper. Welcome to Testeroni, where we help QA specialists become test automation engineers one slice at a time. And today we are going to talk about a very important mindset shift that you need to make in order to be able to make that transition. So there are many technical skills that you need to conquer in order to become a test automation engineer. You need to learn a programming language, and we have a separate video on the channel exactly on that with a deep discussion about which language to choose and why it doesn't matter. So I really recommend you go and give it a watch. But you need to know a language, you need to know a framework, you need to know a bit about some DevOps stuff, you need to know about version control and stuff like that. But these are all technical things. What most people seem to miss in this whole equation is, however, that you still need to also make one monumental mindset shift. And it is as important as having all those great technical skills. And we're going to dive deeper into it today because it is so important and so counterintuitive that I think it actually trumps a lot of more technical stuff, and it is a foundation upon which you should build your technical knowledge. And I also think that by knowing this one thing, this will already set you well ahead of the pack. And so let's jump to a whiteboard for a second to do a little demonstration of what I mean instead of just giving you a definition. So let's imagine that you are doing some kind of an end-to-end test. Let's imagine that you are, as a manual tester, as a QA specialist, QA engineer, let's just imagine that you are following a test case, which is pretty simple. Like, go to a website of our application, go to a given category and try and find a given product in order to click it and check something on the information page, like whether it loads up well. We don't need to write that down specifically to a point because that's not going to be the focus of this demonstration, but just to give you an overview of what we are going to be working with. All right, so let's now try and do a little storyboard of that situation while also keeping note of some of the things on the sidelines. And this will be very important while we're done. So even if you don't know why I am marking these specific points, don't worry for now. It'll all be explained in a second. All right, so we go to our website, and first of all, a pop-up appears that's about cookies, for example. So this is cookies, and you have some button here, so you need to click it. No biggie, but let's have a note of that. So you did a click. Let's just say this is a cursor. And so you did that, and then the website loads finally. So you have a logo, you have some categories, some navigation bar. There's also another window that appears, or a modal or something like that, because there's some maintenance going on, for example, or it informs you about a discount that's happening or something like that. So no biggie, you click that. Again, just so that it does not obfuscate your view, because it would. So you close that one. It had a little X in the corner, so you can close it. And so you did just that. And then finally you're presented with an unobfuscated view of your application. And let's say you need to go to a given category in order to actually check the product that you are supposed to check. So let's say that you need to click this one, and maybe there's a little typo in the category name. So you remember that you found a problem with the category name, but that's not really the subject of the test. So you just make a note of that. Maybe you create a bug. Maybe you just talk to your coworkers about the fact that there was a typo within the category name. But either way, you click it. And so let's progress onwards. You clicked it. Then it takes a minute to load, but sometimes the environment is a little sluggish, so you need to wait for a second. So that's going to be a pretty graphic of a stopwatch. So you are waiting for a moment before it actually loads up, and it surely does load up the category view. So Instead, apart from those things, you also have some products loaded. So again, you need to wait for a moment because, yeah, it sometimes takes a little for the products to load, but again, that's no biggie. You are used to that. And so the products load, but the product you are looking for that you are testing on is on the second page. And so you click, there are like the pages at the bottom, you click like number 2. However, once the second page loads, something wonky happened, like the products loaded in a different manner. But once again, it sometimes happens, like that's live. So you just need to reload the website because it loaded up, but there's something weird happening. So let's just reload the website. So yeah, let's say this is the reload sign of 2 arrows pointing towards the end of each other. And so you are finally presented with the second page where the product that you are looking for resides. Actually, it's a little too much to the right because the spaces between the items are actually 5 pixels too wide. So, however, as a human, you don't really see that. You just see the product is there. Like that's the sense, the whole sense of this test. The sense of this test is to check the product card and whether it is actually attainable, like going through the whole customer journey. So even if you did actually observe that, you would just like with the typo, you would talk to someone or issue a bug, but you are just eyeballing it. You are using your eyes, so you don't even suspect there's anything wrong there. Like 5 pixels, you can't really see that. And so you finally get to the final page, and this page is the product page. So you have like some photos, some description, and the button to buy. And once again, there was the 5 pixel problem. Yeah. So as you can see, we've gone through this whole, of course, this example is a little extreme, that there was a couple of hiccups along the way, but either way, we have actually gone through that adventure and we have arrived at a conclusion that everything is working fine. We are giving this test case a pass because we were able to go right from the beginning, from the loading of the application to the product card, which does contain all the information that we needed. And the things that we were noting here on the sideline, these are all things that are second nature to us, right? Either second nature to us as humans or second nature to us as QA engineers, because that's just the life of a QA specialist in an organization, right? It's not really something that needs to be explicitly stated in the test case. It's obvious that if something doesn't load up, you just reload the page. If something takes a while to load, you just wait for a second. If it becomes too much of a problem, then you just talk to someone. But if it just happens from time to time, there's no biggie. It just happens. That's life. And so you just reload, or you don't really see the problem, or you wait for a second, or you know what's happening anyway, so the typo is not that much of a deal, and so on and so forth. So, or if a pop-up appears, you just close it because you know the sense of the test, so you know that you can just progress with all of that. And so it doesn't need to be explicitly stated. You just do that and progress onwards. And here comes the kicker. If you were to translate the test case that we were talking about, go to a website, go to the category, go to the second page, click a product, go to its product page, product card, and check if everything's all right. If you were to translate that, which you just performed, and you see that it's working, you are giving it a big pass at the end. You actually say that it's working perfectly fine. So if you were to translate that explicitly and like immediately into a test automation script, because of all the things that we were outlining on the sideline, you would have gotten a fail. And you would have gotten a fail at every step that we were actually writing down. And this is why we were actually making note of all of these points. At the beginning, you remember, there was the problem not a problem if you're a human, because it doesn't need to be said, but for a machine, it does need to be said. The cookies window appeared, so you needed to click it off. So the machine would actually, at this moment, give you a fail state. It would say like element not interactable or element not found or something like that, because the element that it has in mind to click is really not interactable at this point in time. So after that, we got the little maintenance window or the promotion code or something like that. It was obfuscating the view. So again, you get a fail because the script does not know what to do with that. It just obfuscates the view, and it was not taught to actually click it off. So sorry, but that's a fail state. After that, there was a little typo in the category name, and it was looking for a specific category name because that was what was built within the locator. And so this typo actually means a fail. Then you need to wait for a page to load. That actually is a timeout. Then you need to wait for the products to load. That's, again, either a timeout or element not found, because it did not find it within its destined time. Then you needed to reload the page because something was wonky with the way that it loaded. Again, that's probably a fail because the locator failed, or it did not manage to actually work in a manner that it was supposed to. And finally, there was a 5-pixel gap. Sometimes it may have not located that either, because the locators usually do not rely on this stuff. But if it was also checking the spacing between the elements, which is also not uncommon, you would have gotten a fail here too. And so what the hell happened? We were checking it all manually, and it was a resounding yes. And then we see that if we were to translate that into test automation, we would have gotten 7 fail states. And so even if some of those, because like I said, this was an extreme example, even if some of those did not arise, you still would have gotten a resounding no, a fail. Why that is? The functionality is working. You can get to the product and you can click the product card and everything is all right and the data inside is all right. So where lies the problem? And so this is the great mindset shift that you need to make if you are to become a test automation engineer. Even if you think that as a manual tester, you are just following a script when trying to test a test case, in reality, you're actually bringing a lot of baggage to the equation. You are bringing the baggage of your human nature and of your QA biases that you have learned on the job, and they are needed. They are there for a reason. You can't, as a QA specialist, just throw your arms up and be like, that's a fail, just because a pop-up appeared. Like that's not really how the job works. But at the same time, this is how the machine is going to be interpreting it. You can't try to identify your testing framework as a human tester. You should treat it like an alien, as someone who you are trying to explain even the most minor details to, not as a fellow tester, not as your coworker, because if you are doing that manually, if you had a pop-up appear or if you had the maintenance window or something like that, you wouldn't just start screaming that the element is not found. If you needed to wait for 5 seconds for the page to load, you wouldn't just throw your arms up and be like, timeout, sorry, I'm not progressing, that's a timeout. So you wouldn't do that as a human, but the machine would, because to it, all the implicit knowledge that we have, all the intertextual things that we just know, either from being users or from just being QAs for some time, all those things are not really that obvious to a machine. And it's not because there's a fault in the machine. There's a fault in the logic that you are programming into the machine, because it is doing exactly what you're telling it to do. And that's for better or worse, because you have full control as a test automation engineer. And the full control also means full responsibility. I'm sorry, but with that great power, there comes some great responsibility too. If you were to click a button, but it wasn't there, you wouldn't just click in the wrong spot, keep clicking, and then keep yelling, element not found, element not interactable, I'm sorry, element not found. But the machine would do exactly that. That's why you cannot think of it as a human being, as a QA specialist, you are taught to think in terms of steps, of assertions, of just tests happening at different steps of the test case. But as a test automation engineer, you need to get rid of this notion, because it's no longer that. You need to start thinking about more of what happens between the lines, what happens between the instructions that are within your test case. The art of test automation isn't just blindly translating test cases into code, because, well, it's obvious that in manual tests, we don't have a booklet attached to every test case, an instruction that tells you how to power on your computer and then what to do in case of something not loading. Of course, there's a lot of implicit knowledge that is just, second nature, but it is not second nature to a machine. And so you kind of need to create this kind of a booklet within your framework so that the machine does know the things that are obvious to us, but which are not obvious to it. A test automation engineer is as responsible for creating the right assertions as they are for creating a setup which actually makes the application ready for running these assertions against it. You can have all the technical knowledge in the world, and you can be the most knowledgeable test automation engineer on the planet. And at the same time, if you fail to do your setups and do the next instructions in such a way that you are certain that the application is going to be ready for them when they are run, those test cases that you try and translate into test automation are going to be completely useless, regardless of your technical knowledge. They won't really do the thing that you create test automation for. That's why, as a test automation engineer, you cannot think about your tests as a series of steps. You need to think about them like a series of steps with all the intertextual info that is happening between the lines. Your job is to not only run the assertions, but to make sure that when they are run, the application is ready to actually run them and to actually return you some valuable information, because that's the whole value of testing as a whole, of quality assurance. You need to get the feedback from the application, regardless of whether you are doing it manually or automatically. And so when doing it manually, you can eyeball a lot of stuff and you can still have the general sense of what is happening, even if it's not explicitly stated. If it's not explicitly stated and quantified in the case of test automation, it is not going to be useful. And even if the test runs, it is either going to be flaky or it is going to give you false positives, false negatives. You can't really rely on that. And the reliability of tests is the first and foremost thing that you should be worried about when you are creating the tests. And there's a couple of ways to actually make sure of that. Like, you have weights or the equivalent of your framework of choice, because some of them try to do that more or less automatically. You have the domain knowledge, like knowing your application and knowing the whole infrastructure and architecture. You have the conditional logic, like testing whether something has appeared only when something else has appeared, if you cannot just wait for a given element. So there's actually a couple of things, and I will do a separate video on that and discuss them more thoroughly. I just want you to know that, of course, there are ways to combat this. It's not like I'm telling you all of this and leaving you with no further action to actually take part in. But the thing that you still need to remember is that it is your job to make sure the setup is proper so that the application is ready for testing. And there are ways to do that, but you still first need to be mindful of the problem in order to explore the ways of combating that. And like I said, there will be a separate video on how to utilize weights, for example, or how to make sure the conditional logic is sound. But either way, still, your first thought should be, I need to make sure that application is ready for testing, not only that it is being properly tested. And so this is the mindset shift that I would like to leave you with today. You should be mindful of the setup as much as of the assertions. And actually, I would even use a metaphor that taking the test cases and making them automated is not so much a translating job as it is a localization job. So you are not simply taking the steps and then translating them into a script, so into a programming language effectively, or into the framework or something like that, you are not translating this as is. You are localizing it. So you are moving generally a work of art, but in this case, a test case, and moving it into a new context so that it retains its significance, it retains its meaning, and it still works as well as it used to. It's not only about the words, it's also about all the other cultural things happening around it. And the same goes for test automation. It's not so much about explicitly translating. It's about making sure that the translation works in a new context and still provides as much value as it used to in the previous one. This will be an important part of your day-to-day job as a test automation engineer. Your job is going to be quantifying and explicitly stating things which seem to be obvious but are not obvious in the least to the machine. As long as you are mindful of that and you take care that it is always happening as it should so that the setup is properly done, you are up for a smooth ride. Like I said before, try to remember that you are not talking to another human. You are talking to an alien. And so you must try and express everything very explicitly so that there are no things happening between the lines within your script anymore. The things between the lines can happen in the test case, which is going to be interpreted by a human being, but it cannot still be happening within your script because it is going to be interpreted as a machine. So once again, try to localize and not translate. And with that, I thank you very much for your attention today. I hope it has been helpful to internalize this new knowledge. And as always, I really welcome you to leave a like, subscribe, leave comments about how you liked the lesson, to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And as always, once again, thank you for watching and keep on rocking.